So, I'm Ed. Last one, I don't know, I'm suddenly awkward. Hi there. So, I have done pretty much everything that you can do in information technology. You know, if you say you work in IT, then people go, oh, so you do like fix the desktops? And there's a lot more to it. Computer science sounds so much nicer. But you know, not everything that's IT is really computer science in the sense of science, you know, really experimenting or coming up with something new. I'll give you some biographical stuff, but somebody will ask. Right now, what I'm doing is, from the information technology side, leading an effort within Southern California Edison to better figure out the flow of power within their distribution grid. If you look out the back of your house and you see wires, they're your power wires, those are part of the distribution grid. It's the lower voltage, meaning like 35,000 volts and lower, 35,000 volts and lower, that goes out to the houses and they step it down. Some of you already know this. The power comes in at very high voltage and it goes down to a lower, down to a lower, down to a lower, and it comes down to like 240 behind your house. You have 120 volts in your sockets, but it's actually coming off a 240 line that's split. That's the reason why. Okay. So we have to figure out whether there's going to be overloads, whether if they add this new solar array, if it's going to overpower the lines and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that. Electrical engineers work that out. My job is to get the computing for it delivered. So, but they say what they want, we deliver it. It's a pretty good deal. I've been doing that for about 2 years, but ultimately I've been a consultant or contractor about half of my career. The other half I've worked for companies, like full-on companies, doing stuff for them. Little biographical, so been married 44 years this August, 6 children, 11 grandchildren. None of my children went into IT, none. But they can all kind of work their computer. And my one son, my eldest son, who's my fourth in line for the kingdom, no, my fourth in line, my fourth child, he's a twin, and he has an audio engineering business. If anybody's interested in music and performance and that kind of stuff here, in audio stuff right now, they're actually sending the signals to speakers, like in a bigger, he does these big arenas, like used to be Staples Center, now it's something else. But you know, these big arenas that have, you know, tens of thousands of people in it, when they do that now, they're actually sending that audio over network lines. They're not sending it like an audio signal, they're digitizing it and sending it out to the speakers that way. Sometimes I help him with his setups because he's got some aspect of networking involved. And I've helped him with these diagrams. There's like 100 speakers in this thing, and all this stuff is coordinated over essentially like a network connection. I just think that's fascinating. So now my children are teaching me things. But he was very grateful that I taught him a little bit, and I'm now his consultant. He does not have to pay me. But now I'm his consultant, so if he gets stuck on something, he calls me up or messages me, and I send him back stuff. So that's kind of fun. It's great that at his age that now I can participate that way, and he teaches me about audio, which I like to learn. Let's see. So here's the deal. I'm in 6th, 7th grade, not now, but I was. And I, just for whatever reason, really wanted to work with computers. Now, they were in the movies a lot, and back then they were a newer thing. You know, if you watched, I liked a lot of science fiction. Science fiction tended to have a lot of computer stuff in it. You know, it wasn't that I liked boxes with blinking lights. It was that everything about what the computer did was cool. Did anybody ever see a movie called 2001? The HAL 9000? Yeah, there you go. It's a kind of this crazy computer. So that was like AI. I mean, it was AI in that, the way it was portrayed. Anybody see iRobot with Will Smith? Ah, there we go, at least one. In that one, Vicky, the computer Vicky, was really like an AI and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there was that, but there was just the way that if you were on the Star Trek show, you know, the captain, you know, the science officer would go to the computer and say, you know, theorize, could an alien exist that has these characteristics? And the computer would go back and yes, that is theoretically possible. I have literally done that with ChatGPT. I mean, was the answer good? How would I test it? Where's that alien? I don't know. So all this kind of stuff, it had something to it that I liked. Also, as I've got older, I've realized what's really driven me a lot is a desire to understand. I want to understand things. I want to understand people. I want to understand music. I want to understand literature, all that stuff. And this was something that was making me want to understand it. So anyway, so I'm in 7th grade, and the various high schools of the area would come out. I could choose high schools where I was. And the high schools would come out, and they would, bring some students out, and they'd do a little presentation. And okay, but one of them was from a technical high school. And they had half your school day was learning something technical. And they had a computer lab. And it wasn't like shop class where you go an hour a day or something. This was 3 to 4 hours a day in whatever you picked. And I thought that means I could do 3 to 4 hours a day learning computers. Now, I had no access to computers. Back then, there were no personal computers. This is back, people in their covered wagons didn't even have laptops to go with it. It was terrible. I'm very old. But this is what I wanted. I don't know if you've ever had the urge to really learn about something or really do something or just involved in something. If people are playing soccer on a field, I want to go kick the ball. Whatever it is, I want to do it. So the point is, I said, okay, I want to go to that school. I had to take an entrance exam. So I took the entrance exam, and the counselor afterwards said, I have bad news and good news. The bad news is, you're not smart enough to do computers. The good news is, your mechanical aptitude is off the scale. So he said, so you can be a mechanic, or you can work in manufacturing, or he gave me a list of the things that I could do, but very clearly I couldn't do computers. So why am I here doing this? So what can I do? So I picked manufacturing and went and did that. My dad worked in a factory, so that kind of made sense to me. And for 3 years, I learned how to cut metal, how to inspect it, how to make a steel surface that is so perfectly flat that if you put another one against it, they stick like glue. That's a little weird thing for you. If you ever get two things that are perfectly flat, you can't separate them easily. You have to slide them apart. So I did that. 3rd year, they did cross-training. And in cross-training, the people from the computer department, electronics, would come over into the manufacturing and learn a little bit about making machines work. A lot of machines are controlled, manufacturing machines are controlled by computer anyway. So that was a good thing for them. On the other hand, manufacturing people like me, with no aptitude for computers, got to take an electronics course. Just an hour a day for half the year. So Mr. Ken Sharp came in, he was our teacher, he taught in electronics normally, came in, did this class and said, now, for this semester, you're going to have electronics. I will take the top 5 students into a class in 2nd semester to build computers from the chips up. So I wanted this very much. And I was not a great student. I wasn't even a good student. But I can tell you, I aced the electronics class. I was #1 in the class. I got into the digital logic class, #1 in that one, aced everything I ever touched in electronics and computers in that junior year. Just because I loved it. This is what I wanted. I would go home and play with this stuff. I mean, I couldn't play with everything because I couldn't afford the parts, but I was always building something. I was always drawing and designing things when I was young. So after that year, I was really done with high school. I had a very rough high school years. The high points were probably those classes. And Latin, I really enjoyed my Latin teacher. So I said I'm leaving high school. I had enough credits to graduate after 3 years. So I went off to Cal Poly Pomona and enrolled. And I wasn't 18 yet or anything, but for some reason they let me in. And so what major do you think I chose? No, animal science. I studied to be a veterinarian. I enjoyed working with horses. They scared me, they tried to kill me, but nevertheless, I worked with horses a little bit. And there were some other things. Socially, I knew people that I wanted to hang around that were into horses, so that was probably the reason too. So I go in there, all the sciencey classes, you know, things like physiology, biology, zoology, even feeds and feeding, because there's some, you know, the chemicals are getting the right food, the food components, the protein and the calories and everything balanced. I took all those, enjoyed them, did well in those classes for the most part, but I was terrible at liberal arts. I was terrible at the math, I was terrible at literature and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't even show up for class sometimes. And if you're going to go and you don't show up for class, what happens? You flunk out. So after 2 years, I left Cal Poly. And my parents were already a mess, but they split up the last time. I didn't have any place to live, so I had to go get a place to live, and I had to find a job. So I found a job in an electronics store, because I was buying stuff there every now and then, and the manager said, hey, if you're looking for a job, I'll hire you. So I got the job, and I was a salesman there. And people were kind to me and taught me things, and somehow, 7 months later, I was the top salesman in the district, and they let me have a store. I had my own retail store before I was 20, just a little before I was 20. I turned 20, enjoyed my birthday, and then my boss demoted me. He wasn't mean, he was absolutely right. I was not up to it. I had some things I was good at, but I wasn't good at everything. So they demoted me. Now, if you're demoted from a manager position, who wants to go back and be a salesperson, right? You're supposed to quit, but I didn't. I didn't know the rules, okay? And so I went back to work for my old boss as a salesman, and I was selling stuff. I really, you know, I loved working with people. I kind of loved working with people. And anyway, I ended up #1 salesman in the district again, like within a year. And so they gave me, not even a year, and then they gave me another store so I could repeat my failures. And that's my life. And so I go over, I take over that store, and then the personal computer appeared. And that company started selling little computers. And they were nothing like this. These are so cool by comparison. We would have done anything to have one of these. But it was these little computers, and they, and I was programming on them at night, you know, after work. If there was a break, I was playing with it. I was trying to learn how to make it do things. It wasn't about learning program. It was about being able to make it do things and understanding it. I wanted to know why it did things. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I played and played and played, you know. And I sold a lot of them. So then they moved me into a computer-only division. And after they did that, you know, I was still doing well. And one day I decided, we got these new computers that were color. Color was a new concept. And so I did this thing where I drew what looked like a fan belt system. Everybody knows what a fan belt system like on the engine on a car? Okay. On a car, there's parts of it that have pulleys, and they put like big, thick rubber bands between them, so they all turn. One of them runs the alternator, which generates power for a gas engine to run the spark and ignition and all that stuff, but also recharges the battery. Okay, so that's the basics of that. Did I remember to turn this on? Yeah, I did, okay. Good, sorry. Let's see. So, I built this thing, and I put it on the screen, but it looked kind of dull. So I wanted it to move. I wanted it to shake, because you know, the engine's shaking and all that kind of stuff. So I used random numbers in the program to make it move around just a little bit. So, you know, it got some attention. I figured I might sell some computers. So a guy comes in, he's like 50, you know, older guy, got a suit on, the whole bit. And he says, oh, what's that? And I told him, and oh, how'd you do it? And I showed him the code and explained it. This is how I sold computers, was that I would help people understand it. Because if I want to understand, I figure everybody else wants to understand, which isn't necessarily true. So I'm going through, and I explained, I didn't actually spend that much time. And he looks at me and he goes, do you want a job? And I said, well, I've got one. Yeah. I said, sure. Of course I want a job. He had his own company that was teaching computer graphics and also providing services to convert mechanical drawings about an object, into the computer. But back in those days, and really still now, somebody had to type that in. They had to go in and look at it and go, oh, that's got a circle here, I'll put a circle. Oh, there's another circle, but you know, that kind of thing. But he pretty much hired me just on that program that I think had about 6 lines and 3 circles. That was enough for him. I worked for him for 8 years. Every time he said, you know, I don't really have time to mess around with backing up the computer, doing all this other stuff that needs to be done. Do you want to do that? I said, sure. Well, you know, we got to hook up this remote computer over a phone line, and all. Didn't you figure that out? He said, there's one that's working in there already. And I said, I'll go look at it. I looked at it, inspected it. There's no internet. I can't go look this stuff up. A lot of it was by experimentation. If I pull this wire off, what happens? The phone rings. Oh, I guess I shouldn't pull that wire off. Because they would call it, where's my line? I actually did take a line down accidentally early in those months. Never did that again. So I learned how to connect up the computers. I learned how to disassemble and reassemble a computer. We needed more power, so we found a used computer, because they were very expensive. We found a used computer. The computers that we used the most were the size of 3 refrigerators put next to each other. That's about the size of one computer. The CPU boards were 19 inches by 19 inches. They connected onto a 400-pin bus. So when they slid in, they'd slide into the motherboard, which I'm not a motherboard like a PC motherboard. And it took 2 19-inch boards to make one CPU, not a chip. And it took 2 more boards to do floating point, to do math that has decimals in it. So 4 boards just to do what your little CPU in your phone can do right now. Now your phone has, I don't know how much RAM in it, you know, many megabytes, possibly a gigabyte. The computers that I had 16 users on, and I had 1 megabyte of memory. And it was enough to run engineering software for 16 people at once. It was very efficient code. Somewhere around this time, we ran out of some equipment, and I said, I will design this equipment for you, because we didn't have a supplier for it anymore. And around that time, I bought that and built it. Now, I've got it over on the table so you can see it up close when you get on your way out. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, okay? That has 2K of RAM, 2K of memory. Have you ever seen one of these?
No. Well, actually, I saw one a long time ago. I saw the kit.
All right. And so I bought the kit.
Is that a Tandy or a?
No, this is way before. This is
even before Tandy.
This is SD Systems, the S100 Z80.
That's really cool.
Anyway, 2K of RAM, and you know why it has 2K of RAM? Because I upgraded it. It came with 1. I doubled its memory. 2,000 bytes of memory. So the program and the data all had to fit into that. And then when you come by, you can see I put some modifications on it because I was trying to test out this device that I was building for this guy. And what I told him was, I said, I'm sure I can do this. I had 1 year, 1 hour a day for 1 year of digital logic and chips. That was all I had to go on. And so I designed this device, not this one. I designed it and sold it to him, and I sold enough of them to get the down payment on a house. So our first house came from that design that was in the first few years of getting married. Anyway, I ended up doing everything there, and let's move on to something else. I worked there for 8 years, did everything for him, moved to a very large company, but I got really good at troubleshooting. I got really good at figuring out what was wrong and how to fix it, just because I had to do it. We were a small company, and we couldn't afford to bring in a consultant. So I just had to make it work. And I did the same thing a couple of times, but I've actually found 2 worldwide bugs and got them. I unfortunately did not get the one resolved. It was not mine. We were doing some work with a product, and I was trying to figure out how to talk to the product. And in doing it, I had to figure out a particular part having to do with dates. And I had to go through and figure this stuff out because there was nobody to ask. There was no internet. There was no, you can't go on Reddit and go, hey, how do I do this? Can't go AI. There was none of that. So I figured it all out, but I had a problem to test it, because testing your software is really important. To test the software, I had to shut the system down when nobody was on it, move the date up to the future, and make sure my program would work 5 years from then, or 2 years from then, or whatever. I had to test that. And when I tested it, my program failed. It would work for any date up to about 1.5 years ahead. When I went past 1.5 years, it didn't work anymore. And I thought, what's going on with that? That's kind of weird. And it didn't make any sense. There was no pattern to it. There was nothing special about it except that the date was January the 1st of that year that was ahead. Okay? And I had a lot of stuff to do. I was running all the systems at that time. I was installing new installations. I was designing a new computer center. I ended up designing data centers. I'm doing all this stuff. And finally, I called support for the software company, and they gave me the same answer that everybody gives me in support. Oh, nobody's ever asked that question before. I always find the problems nobody else found. So, the representative over there went in, did the same thing I did. She shut down their systems in development, checked it, it blew up. But this time, she checked the whole system, and the whole system blew. So I had accidentally stumbled onto a problem that was going to blow up all the software in 1.5 years. And so we had a ticket. The vice president said, tell your customer it's not that year yet. And he just blew it off and did nothing. And 1.5 years later, it blew worldwide. And the folks that I knew that had helped me with my system, that were knowledgeable, I had told them, watch out, January 1st of this year, it's going to blow. So they were all ready. They took backups, they covered themselves. But all around the world, it failed. And so anyway, when I left that company that I was at, the company that had that software hired me. Because I had the reputation. The vice president of development did not like me very much. But he didn't bother me. And I started out in quality control. And I just sort of, I'm a little bit like a virus. I sort of creep in and start doing everything, you know? But just to be clear, you know, it's not about getting rich, because I never got rich or anything. I mean, I've raised 6 children on one paycheck. Not one paycheck, literally, but, you know, on one job. And it's been a good life, but my objective was never to get rich. My objective was to understand and to solve things, to be able to make things work right, you know? I still mess around with computer stuff at home just because I want to. I got one of these little flow meters, you know, for the water coming into the house. And it has an API. I can actually go in with Python and find out how much water is flowing. Just seeing that work makes me happy. You know, I just sort of enjoy it. I worked for Oracle for a while, a company you may have heard of. They do databases, very, very large, one of the largest companies in revenue. I don't know if they still are, probably. And they pretty much just had me go around the country solving problems and running projects that were difficult. I spent a lot of time fixing broken projects, making things, not just the program, but the team, making it so the team would be productive. And honestly, a lot of that is just treating people like human beings and enjoying working with the people, caring about them, and wanting to achieve something good together. What we're doing right now at Edison is very, very innovative, and it's a very big deal. But I never forget that it's people. So it's a little interesting because on the one hand, I love the work and I enjoy computers and engineering and all that stuff. But I also am very human. You know, I enjoy the people and I do other things. And I think it's really important not to be so obsessed with work that that's your whole life. You know, you want to have a life. Work is there to support our life, not the other way around. You know, we work so that we can have food and we can help other people and we can do the things that we want to do. I mean, the jobs have been good enough that I've been able to go out and climb in the rocks and you know, and go out to Joshua Tree or Yosemite and climb. Yeah, I get to do that because I can afford the gas to go out there. You know, I can take my children, which I've done. I took my children climbing at times and just had a good time, you know. Every now and then I go rent a sailboat and I go sail. It doesn't cost that much money. But if I didn't work, it would be very hard to do that. And if friends are in trouble, I can help them sometimes. So it's kind of nice. Okay. Do you know what the time is for me? Just
2:15 is when it's done.
okay, good. So that gives us about 20 minutes. I'm trying to be careful. You know, I tell different classes different things because it's just whatever I go with at the time. I hope this is interesting for you. If you know people in the other classes, you can ask them what they heard and you can compare notes. Sometimes that's a good way to learn more and it gives you something to talk about. I do want to stop now and take some questions and just see, I mean, you can ask me anytime. You can interrupt me in the middle of answering one question and we'll shift to another thing and go back to do it. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you ever wish that you at least tried any other like careers and stuff, like different other?
You know, the problem is that this has worked. I'll tell you what I do sometimes question is back when I was close to leaving that first company that I worked 8 years at, I was doing some hardware design on the side. And I did the one that got the house payment on the house. I'm thrilled over that. I did another thing that actually got us enough money to get a really nice computer. I'm glad for that. But I did a weird thing. I started doing what are called hardware retrofits. And that's where you take some device and somebody engages me to make the device do something it was never intended to do. And I got a contract with a company out in Arizona that was doing a big contract for the Air Force. I did not want to do defense work. I wanted to stay away from that. But it just sort of worked out. And they just needed me to modify a keyboard so it would do something differently to meet some specification. And so I pulled chips out of it and put little boards in it and made little things to modify it, and that's cool. And so they said, okay, we need to, before we can have you manufacture these, we need to inspect your facility. And I said, well, I do all the work out of a little room in my house. Oh, you'd be surprised what we approve. So these two inspectors come out from Arizona. They flew out just to see my manufacturing facility, which is my house. I built that first thing on my coffee table. I mean, you know, it's crazy. So they come out and they're kind of shaking their heads coming up the driveway. And they said, you know, we can't approve this. You got to have a factory. You got to have a building and stuff. And I said, no. And he said, if we say yes on this, the next thing that happens is 16 Air Force colonels have to come out here. And I said, no problem. We'll give them coffee and donuts at the door. We'll run them around past the office. And then they can go back out. You know, no problem. And, you know, we had a good laugh. But they said, look, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to rent a facility. And it could be a small one that's really a commercial building and do the whole thing. You're going to have to get your oscilloscope calibrated, have all the right stuff. And you know, my third daughter was just born. She was a year old or something. And I had this job and I was always a little worried about the job. And I knew I was going to have to make a change. And I said, you know, I just don't think I want to take a chance. I have to put all that money on the line. And it was a $250,000 contract, you know, which was not bad. And I said, I just wonder if I got lucky, in spite of what Mrs. V said. Two things I tell my teams. I am incredibly lucky, and I am never bored. I don't even bore myself, and that's an accomplishment. Because other stuff's always going on through my head. But the point is, I said no to that. And I just sold them the design and said, let somebody else manufacture it. Somebody else can have the $250,000. Give me $500 for the design, and we'll call it even. I don't care. Because I'm not motivated by money. But I do have questions about that. You know, I go, and I coming up for this, somebody always asks that question. And not that question, but about it. And I have to say, yeah, you know, it's not a regret. But like, you didn't say it that way. But I wonder, if I had done that, would I have been better off? But then I sometimes have to ask, all the people I know that own businesses and have a lot of money, are they happy? Not reliably. Not reliably. I'm not sure money buys happiness. No, actually I'm sure it doesn't. So, I don't know, maybe I would have been less happy. And other things, teaching, I definitely wanted to be a teacher. But it never worked out for me. And then I just couldn't make it work with the, The excuse is I couldn't afford to take the cut and pay. The truth is, I don't think I could have dealt with the bureaucracy well. You know, if you talk to teachers, they'll be nodding their heads going, yeah, it's tough. Because really dedicated teachers sometimes have a very, very difficult time. I have the advantage that people's profit was relying on my skills. So they paid me for that. I didn't make as much as I could have. I'm no Steve Jobs, I'm no Mark, whatever. I did not get rich. That was never my objective. And I also did not ever get any significant amount of power. I've led so many teams and so much innovation, and I've managed to do it without having power. You know? I'm kind of like there's somebody else has got power, and I'm like just getting people to do it because it's cool. You know, or because we all care about each other. In my teams, we all support each other. And they know that I love them. And we don't say that word very often in business or in anything else, but I do. I want their benefit. I've had people that were going through illnesses and people that were stressed, and we have to support each other. It's really important. So, yeah, I have thought, you know, mostly teaching. And I've thought seriously about writing, but I wasn't ready. But now I am, and I'm finally almost through my first book. So we'll see how that goes. It's not fiction, it's hard to describe. Yes?
What's your book about?
Oh! Well, nice of you to ask. You know what? The book is actually an attempt to do what I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to tell stories and see if anybody gets something out of it. I give it, the metaphor is a junkyard. I say my life is like a junkyard. Why don't you wander through it and see if you get something you can use? And some of you may. You may take something away from this and go, you know what? Somebody told me I'm not smart enough to do this, or I'm not good looking enough to do this, or whatever. Maybe I can. Maybe you can. But you can still try, and if you're dedicated and you really want it, and if you're good at it, you know, not every actor in Hollywood is great looking. There's some people that are awfully weird looking, and they do fine. I mean, you know, there's villains, goodness knows. Willem Dafoe was never known for his beauty, if you know who that is. The guy with Spider-Man and the whole bit. Oh, my goodness. All right, is that good? Oh, yeah, it's very hard to describe, but we'll see. If it goes someplace, then life will be good. And if not, I'll still be happy.
What jobs would you recommend to people who are trying to break into the computer science industry?
It depends on what you want to do. So if you like to invent and innovate, you should innovate and invent now. Just do it. Get something that's so cool. I mean, look at Facebook. You know, and I'm not saying that he's the model, because I wouldn't trade places with him for $1 billion. I guess it'd be more than that. It'd be 40 billion, wouldn't it? But find something you want to do. If you really, really just like geeking out on the math, you know, and doing calculations, find something that you can do that way. That's one path, is invent something now and get in the habit of inventing things. If you want to solve problems, you probably want to aim for one of the consulting firms, so you need just a basic computer science degree probably and all that stuff. I did a lot, I didn't tell you this, but you can kind of figure it out. I did a lot without a degree. I got through most of my career, more than half, with no degree, and just got paid because I solved problems, because I've got a strong sense of logic, you know, and that got me by. I guess I should tell you this story, because in this somewhere you may get an answer, but there's so many ways. You have to find your path. But when I was working at this one company and engineering software, and this guy that was really young came to me and said, so how do you do this? And it was some operation, geometric thing to make lines join up with some circles and ellipses in some way. And I told him, and I took a minute and I went, okay, yeah, you'd go here, 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 and here. And he asked me, he said, did you really know that, or did you just figure that out in your head? And I said, well, I just figured it out. I mean, that's the way it would work. And he goes, all this time I thought you were smart. You're just figuring things out. You don't really know anything. And to somebody here, that might make sense. I don't know. But I thought that was shocking. You know, for me, that was kind of shocking. but it made me understand how people think. So you can go in through, there are people I know that are very successful that got in through customer support. That's a dangerous job right now because with AI, they're trying to get rid of all the customer support people. But there's that. Obviously, if you can find something unusual to do with AI, you know, if you can innovate there, but it really comes down to whether you want to innovate or if you want to support. Do you want to follow, do you want to realize, we say the word is, do you want to build something according to someone's vision, or do you have the vision? And I can tell you, it's very, very hard to do it alone. You need friends if you're going to innovate, if you're going to do something on your own. But otherwise, you get the degrees and you try to find something that really excites you. That's the main thing though. Find out what drives you and work toward that. That's what I did, and I did not do it intelligently. I never asked the question you're asking. Nobody ever gave me an answer. It just, for me, I kind of just blindly stumbled into it doing what I felt like doing. And I think that's lovely if that works that way. But that doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes you have to try a lot of things and you accidentally trip over the thing you want. Does that make some sense? Oh, I wish I could tell you something better than that. Yes, ma'am?
Do you think like doing what you love makes you like it less because it has to be like done like a job?
Ooh, doing what you like because it has to be done. Do you lose your love for it, essentially? And some would say yes. Man, that's profound. Okay, here's the thing. It depends on who you are. If you really enjoy something, I almost have to go to poetry on this. Programming and poetry are very similar. In poetry, you're trying to say something with as few words as you can, as perfectly as you can. And that's the way programming is. You're trying to create it with no waste. You don't want to waste anything in programming. Back in the days of computers like this, we had to be so careful because we had so little memory. You know, look up what the lunar module for Apollo, the amount of memory they had, I think was 4K. To go to the moon! You know, that's awesome. So here's the thing. It depends on what kind of person you are. If you really love the thing, in poetry or in computers, you probably love something that's beneath it all. Something under it. In my case, I want to understand, and I just happen to settle on computers. I could have been a mechanical engineer. I could have done a lot of things. And I might have even been a writer of mysteries and tried to write something that I could really understand it in the right way. You know, and maybe that would have been great. But if you really love it, you're probably in touch with something deeper in it. And there's something very satisfying for me to make something work. And in computing, I can make something work. I just got a quality control report from my guys on something, and it's like, oh, there's no major bugs. And there's like this little, you know, okay, you know, 40 or 50 people all breathe a sigh of relief. You know, there's a little dopamine rush if you haven't studied your brain chemicals and stuff, but dopamine, you know, when you enjoy something, you get this thing. And just probably where the word dope comes from, I'm sorry. But I think sometimes we think we want something, but we're expecting something from it it can't give. And if we do that, we won't be satisfied. Also for me, the fact that I enjoy accomplishment, I'm curious, but I also like something to work. Those two things work in my favor. I would keep doing this until I drop dead. I'm hoping I can retire because I would like to spend more time with my grandchildren. I would like to climb more rocks, sail more boats, run more, bike more. I live about 13 miles away from the beach. You know, it's a good long way. There's a bike trail. I ride down to the beach and back, or I ride from Anaheim to Corona, down to Newport and back to Anaheim. I like doing that. I can't do it much right now because right now I'm really, really, really busy. So, is that, and I can't give you guys full answers on stuff because it's just not time, but does that help? So, don't be afraid of it. If you really love it, and besides, if you love it and you find out you don't, that's life. Move on, find something else. You know, we're okay.
Do you think grades like define a person? Like, can students be like the future inventors?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But here's the thing: I have 6 children, right? I did not tell my children, if you don't get A's, I won't love you. I've known people that said that. And at the same time, if my children came back with less than an A, and I don't mean like once in a while, but when we talked about grades early on, what I told them was, I said, the grade is telling you how much of what you spent time on you kept. Time is precious. These hours that you sit here, your time is valuable. I try to do a good job on these talks because I respect your time. That's why I wear a suit. Not for your time, but I wear this out of respect for you. I'm not going to come in here sloppy, and how you dress is how you dress. I'm not talking about that. I have to show you the right respect. I'm here to serve you. So with my children, I'm there to serve my children, not the other way around. And I told them, I said, if you get an A, it means that what you spent your time on, you picked it up. You got something for your time. But if you get an F, it means that you wasted your time sitting in the chair, mostly. Now, having said that, I was very bad at doing homework in school, and I don't really know for sure, but I think my grades were even bad in the subjects that I loved. But I can tell you things about the metabolism of a cell that I learned so many decades ago because I loved the information. I just didn't work well with the discipline of a class. Does that make sense? So your grades don't define you, but they do tell you something about how much you retained, and that's good information for you. Now, there are people in the world that are looking to hire you, and they may at some point look at grades early on, but the rest of your career, nobody knows. People thought I had a master's degree when I had 3 years of high school.
What are some red flags in jobs?
Okay, do you mean red flag that you wouldn't want to work there, or red flags that they wouldn't want you?
Red flags that you wouldn't want to work there.
Oh yeah. Dishonesty for me. Number one, I have told people in job interviews before, way back, I will never lie for you. If this job involves lying, forget it. I just won't do that, and I know that, and I have been asked to lie in places, and I either left or I just said no and I survived. I have quit jobs because the CEO gave me the creeps. I just felt like I couldn't trust them. There was something funny there. Some of them were involved in paying politicians off, that kind of thing. And I don't want to be with that. So ethical behavior is a green flag, but you can't tell because everybody wants to look ethical. Over concern, I think when you're starting out, you have to ignore a lot of the red flags. You got to get a start, and sometimes you just don't know. I can't predict all the situations. But obviously unethical behavior for me is a red flag, and I'm looking at whether the person is sincere or if they seem kind of phony. Because there's nothing more important, everything, there's a lot of things that are important. But it's very important to me to be honest with people and be straightforward. They say authentic, but now it's all about faking being authentic, and I hate that. But I'm just looking to see, does this person seem real to me? Are they being straight up with me? And I don't know how you develop that. I think you either develop it or you don't, or you develop it later in life or earlier, I don't know. But honestly, it should be somebody that you want to spend time with, that, trying to think of I haven't turned down one that was a marketing company, and that one, I just felt their business was based on kind of a dishonest model. I did stuff for a company that was assisting attorneys with class action lawsuits by converting audio information from recordings into transcripts and searching for key words in customer service interactions. They actually went to give me a check, and I said, no, I'm not taking any money from you. I don't feel comfortable doing this. So, but for me, the big thing is unethical behavior. If they'll be dishonest with their customer, they'll be dishonest with you. That's the simple route. So, and whatever's most important to you, make sure they're not obviously opposed to it. Anybody else? Please. Yes?
Are there any things that you've experienced on your path that you wish either somebody had told you about or you could have avoided, or is the entire journey just something that you wouldn't have changed?
No, it's not that I wouldn't have changed, but I recognize that people can't really prepare us for the things that are going to come. And I wouldn't have been ready to receive it. You know, when you're young, and it's not even just being young. It's when you're 40, there's things you wouldn't understand if your 60-year-old self told you. I mean, I'm almost 70. There's a lot I wish I could say to my 14-year-old self. You know, stop that, you idiot. You know, I can't do it. It wouldn't have worked. I can tell you that my young self would never recognize me now. But what I think is key there is that when things happen, I just sort of accept it, learn from it, and move on. I'll tell you a funny one, though, and I hope the thing doesn't ring. Okay, that isn't ringing there. No, okay. So that's something vibrating. When I was in the earlier job, and I think that was important because that's where the red flags would have come in, was in the early employment. After that, nobody's going to hire me that's doing bad things because they already know me. They can tell by just talking with me it's not going to work. But there was a thing where somebody was stealing from my company. I took over management of another store, not a new one, another store, and I look in the books and I can see this guy's been taking money. And so I gathered up the receipts, I gathered up the evidence, and I go to corporate security and I said, you know, I didn't really know the guy, and I was like, you know, this is what I've got. I know what this looks like to me. I didn't go in there saying, hey, the guy's stealing. I said, Don Dean was the guy's name. I said, Don, I have this. I know what this looks like to me. What does this look like to you? You're the district security guy. And he looks at it and he goes, well, it's what you obviously thought it was. Yeah, he's doing stuff. They went over, they met with the guy, he confessed, all that kind of stuff. You know, this is kind of the cycle. Next day or two, you know, I followed up with Don. I called up and I say, you know, I need to talk to Don Dean. I'm sorry, he's not with us anymore. The security head's not with us anymore. He got fired. The regional security guy got fired. My district manager called up and said, the regional manager just wants you to know he doesn't think you're a very good team player. I got censured. He had vice presidential protection. He had a vice president of the company that protected him. They shipped him off to a different place, quietly kept him over there, and then promoted him. So what would I have told myself to avoid that? Should I have not reported this stuff? That was my financial duty to the company. Could I have done anything differently? I could have. You know, does that kind of help?
Yeah.
You know, it's just accept it. You're going to take some bumps and bruises. Stuff's going to happen, and you're just going to roll through it and go toward what you want. Okay? That was the bell?
That was a bell.
Okay. I am so sorry. I wish I could keep going longer.